get my 6. This video is so going to get me canceled, but I'm going to make it anyway. So let's get through the previews. Welcome to the most awesomest homesteading channel on the entire planet. Doesn't have anything to do with homesteading off the grid. Now, I'm going to plug a book, but no, it's not one of mine. My 13 years and 7 months old son just finished reading 1984. Okay? It's going to sound like I'm living my life by memes. I'm not, but I am a social media content creator, 1.3 million followers, various platforms. I see a lot of memes. Some of them make sense to me. There was one I read years ago that said, rather than striving to give your children all the things you never had, strive to teach them all the things you wish you knew, or that you never knew that you wish you did. Instead of giving them the stuff you never had, you wish you did, pass on the knowledge, maybe things you've learned. And so this is one of the ways in which I do that. There's tons of ways. I can make an hours long video just about that. It's homeschooling. I coach the sports teams. I intentionally work in a career where I'm able to work at home, very limited hours spent actually doing it, so I can spend my time with him and his mother, my wife. I'm the richest man in the world because true wealth is time and freedom. See, I saw a reel the other day, says poor people focus on money and they'll work long hours just for a little bit of money, and they don't have the time to even go to their kids' games, let alone volunteer to coach. Whereas wealthy people, they value time, because money, you can make that with ideas, concepts, systems, which is what I do. Click, schedule a post to hit every 30 minutes throughout the day on Facebook from 6 a.m. to midnight, and I'm scheduled up for 1 month in advance. It takes me about an hour to do that per day. And so if I I don't want to work for the next week because I want to go to the beach or something, we just go to the beach and the work's being done, the work's getting paid. So it's all a mindset, folks, and it's part of why I'm making this video. I got so many emails over the weekend, I guess because of a video I did a couple days ago where I got real. People were mentioning about how it helps them. They enjoy my real life stories more than the stories I read from the books I write. I think the best of which is The Lunatic, and we're going to talk about this today, and it does go hand in hand with this and all the things I'm going to say to get me canceled. So my son comes to me last night after he finishes this book, and the book before this, he read The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. There's some I'm holding off on because his brain maturity level just isn't like Atlas Shrugged and, of course, The Fountainhead, both by Ayn Rand. He won't read those until a few years down the road because there's so many concepts in there he's just not ready for. But he was disturbed, and he always asks before he reads a book I recommend, he says, why is it that you want me to read this book? And for example, when it was The Grapes of Wrath, I said, well, basically that's the story of America. The hardships they go through, the way they refuse to give up, the way individuals help each other when the greedy corporations are price gouging on food, putting produce, using bulldozers, and they literally did this during the Dust Bowl, the Great Depression, the 1930s. The California farmers, they would bulldoze perfectly good, healthy, edible produce, vegetables, fruits, whatever they were growing, into like ditches and bury them up because they had an excess. But they were price gouging. People were dying of starvation. But man, the things that we think only other people's governments and corporations do, So with this one, though, the answer to his question is, what is it about this that makes you want me to read it? I said, you'll better understand the times in which we live, because this book was written, I think, in the 1939, 41, somewhere around there, and he was off by about 40 years. We weren't quite there yet in 1984, but in 2024 we are. We're here. So my son was disturbed by this, and he brought up a specific scene in the book that he wanted to talk to me about, because we always do book reviews afterwards. I'm his learning coach, since he is homeschooled. And he will be homeschooled again this year because the lunacy has not stopped yet in the public schools. We might have a chance to get it stopped in January, potentially, I hope. And if so, hey, got no problem with him going back next year. But for now, no. So there was a scene where the main character, whose name is Winston, I know most of you have read the book. Most of you are like-minded with me, and that's why you enjoy this channel. He was being tortured. He was being smacked around, and his torturer was saying, "How many fingers am I holding up? If Big Brother were present and Big Brother were to tell you I'm holding up 5 fingers, what would you say?" Well, Winston says 4. So the guy smacks him. He says, "How many fingers am I holding up?" And the guy's like, 4. Smacks him again. Because he's saying what is. He's saying what he sees. He's stating a fact. So once he's been abused long enough, he finally says, okay, it's 5 fingers, even though the guy was still holding up 4 fingers. But again, he was supposed to act as if he were in the presence of Big Brother, and Big Brother was saying it's 5 fingers, 4 is 5. He says, okay, it's 5 fingers. Smacks him again. He's like, why'd you smack me again? Because I said what Big Brother wanted me to say. And well, that smack was for defying logic and reality. So you're wrong when you're wrong, and you're wrong when you're right. Aren't we there? Are we not there? So, people have asked me, I started to get into it on the last episode about this Algerian female boxer, Imaine Khalif. I think that's how, I don't know how to pronounce it, but that's what it looks like. These are my notes. I started to talk about that, but then I started talking about the Gypsy King, Tyson Fury, and Alexander Usyk from Ukraine. I talked about their fight. I never gave you my view on this, but I'm going to today. This video is so going to get me canceled, and you'll be surprised at what my view is. But before I get to that, I'm going to start with another story. And as you know, just be patient. They all tie in together. The year was 2015, early fall, late summer. It was 10 o'clock at night. I was in Charlottesville, Virginia. I was living in the city at that time. I brought my wife and son over in 2016, and then that's, of course, when we bought our land and home out here in the country. But I was living in an apartment. My transportation was a moped. I bought a moped, didn't have a vehicle, because I'd lived over in the Philippines for 6 years. I've been out of the country all these years. I had nothing. When we came here, we had to buy all of our furniture, our clothes, our vehicles, screwdrivers, hammers, anything we needed, we had to buy. So, and we've accumulated everything we need over the last 8 years. We're good to go. So I'm going to the grocery store, 10 o'clock at night. I go to Harris Teeter, and I pull up. There's only a couple of cars in the parking lot, and I noticed that they had signs for veteran parking right up front. Now, I never park in those, even though I'm a veteran. A real one with a DD 214. And you're like, what do you mean a real one? Is there any other such thing? We're getting to it. So, but that night I did. I thought, why not? I was in Iraq, 2008, 2009, machine gunner for a convoy security team. Spent 6 months in an army hospital when I got back. A lot of horror stories to go along with that. So I park in this parking spot. I go in, I get what few things I need, and stick them in my backpack after I pay for them. Come out, and there's a gentleman standing there by my moped with his arms crossed. He looked challenging. I was like, what is this? But he wasn't like some roughneck, tatted up biker guy. He was like a typical Charlottesville yuppie. Designer glasses and whatever. What is that thing with the whale on it? Vineyard Vines, khaki shorts, pleated and all that, And I'm like, what's this dude up to? So I get out there, and he goes, is this your moped? I said, yeah, it is. He says, are you a veteran? I said, yeah. He goes, what branch were you in? I said, Army. But what about you? Were you in the Army? He goes, this isn't about me. This is about you. Where were you stationed? So I was in Mosul for a year. What branch were you in? He goes, listen, I didn't serve. He says, my father was in World War II, and I'm just making sure that anybody that parks in veteran parking spots are indeed veterans. So I just had to vet you to make sure you were a veteran. Then he got in his BMW, and then he left. And I thought, that's one of the weirdest experiences I've ever had. And no, I haven't parked in a veterans parking spot since. Not because of that. It's because I can walk. I have certain issues as a result of my time in service, but the ability to walk is not one of them. And so I leave those spots for the guys and the girls that maybe do have issues with walking. So anyway, there were a couple of other experiences I had. I was at the Outer Banks of North Carolina a few years back, and I was just talking to these people that I just met there. We were small talking. I mentioned something about, they were talking about their buddy was in Iraq, and I said, yeah, I was in Mosul. I was in Iraq, and they want to know when, what years were you there? What unit were you with? I was like, why are you guys grilling me? And they're like, well, we just want to make sure you're actually a veteran, because we have friends that are, and relatives that were, or that are, and we just, and I'm thinking, and again, I remember the guy in the parking lot, and I'm like, who would claim to be a veteran when they're not? I mean, you either were or you weren't, and that's a pretty serious thing. People sacrifice life and limb, and I mean, people lose families over deployments and time in service. I'm one of them. So who would fake that, right? Lo and behold, I finally met somebody that claimed to be a veteran who wasn't. That dude's persona is, the main character in this book is largely, yet fictitiously based on that lunatic's persona. Because, so here's the deal. Long story short, this guy would always talk about when he was in the Navy. Like, when we would talk, if I mentioned anything about the Army, he'd say, yeah, I was just like that when I was in the Navy. It was exactly like that when I was in the Navy. Yeah, when I was in the Navy, I knew this one guy, and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, after I'd known this guy for a few months, we're talking, and what I remembered about the Navy was that they do their basic training on one of the Great Lakes, and I know it's like heck up there in the winter. So I asked this guy, I said, so when you went to basic training for the Navy, were you up there in the summer, which I've heard it can be quite humid up there too, or did you have the displeasure of going up there in the winter? They have the nasty winters. They get that snow effect off the lakes. He goes, oh, well, I never went to basic training. I was like, how do you not go to basic training? I said, what'd you do, OCS in college? And so you graduated with your commission, and you got to skip that? He goes, well, kinda. I'm like, what do you mean kinda? So here's the story. He was in ROTC when he went to college, but he never went to the military. He graduated from college. He had been in ROTC, but he never enlisted, never went in as an officer, never served. He does not have a DD-214. And for non-military folks, what that is that's your permanent record of your military service. Anytime you deal with the VA, the government, anytime you are claiming to be a veteran for any benefits or services, or to state factual history, you got to show that DD-214. And in the eyes of the government, if you don't have that, you're not a veteran. And in the eyes of everyone else, including and especially veterans. So I'm like, what do you mean, kind of? Well, and I just explained it. Went ROTC in college, never served, but went around talking about when he was in the Navy, when I was in the Navy this, when I was in the Navy that. Well, what does that do for somebody? Well, I guess it gives them some instant respect, right? Most of us respect our veterans. And when we find out someone's a veteran, most of us say, hey, thank you for your service. Man, he probably ate that crap up for however many years since he'd been out of college, 40 years. And at one point I thought, maybe I misheard him. Because I grilled him on it a little bit further, because then he made the stupid statement, oh, but it's pretty much the same thing. I said, being an ROTC in college is the same thing as having actually been in the military? He goes, yeah, we did the same thing you guys did. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm confused. You're telling me, so when I was in the Army, I got to go back to my dorm room every night or my apartment and go to football games on the weekends. Well, I mean, except for that, And I'm like, yeah, and how about the part where I went to hell for a year, risked my life daily, got abused by toxic leadership, came home to no family, no money, no truck, no nothing. That's just like ROTC and college. Well, no, not that. And then I think he said, I must have misspoke, and I'm thinking, no, he was gaslighting is what it was. So then at some point after that, I was around this individual again. when someone else that he had known for many, many years was there. And we were securing something down onto the back of a flatbed trailer. And so this other guy that I just met that day says, here, so-and-so to that individual, he says, you were in the Navy, you tie the knot. You probably know how to tie all kinds of knots. And I looked at that guy like this. Then I looked back over at the other guy, the stolen valor guy, claimed to be a veteran, and he was like this. And he was like, I was never actually in the Navy. A guy that he'd known for 20 years looks up, he says, what? The whole time I've known you, I thought you were in the Navy. You're always talking about your service days. Then the guy says, I got to go get another rope. He turns around, he leaves, and the guy's looking like that. I said, dude, I've only known him for a few months, but he's done that to me too, but I called him out on it about a week ago. And I told him when I called him out on it, I said, listen, I'm not going to punch you in the throat, but there are veterans out there who will if you do that. You need to stop. You need to stop telling people you're a veteran. You need to clear it up with anybody that you have gaslightingly led to believe, very sociopathically, through lies of omissions, and in this case, just a straight out lie. If there are people in your life that still believe you're a Navy vet, you need to fix that, because this will catch up to you bad someday. So anyway, the guy told me, yeah, he's always talked about being in the Navy. And I said, well, he wasn't. I said, he finally fessed up to it, because I am a veteran. I was in Iraq, I was in the Army, and I was here. If I wasn't here, he probably would have told you more stories about his days in the Navy. So what's my point of that, and why is this going to get me canceled? No, that's not the part that's going to get me canceled. The next part is, I think we'd all agree that if you were not in the military, you are not allowed to call yourself a veteran. Okay, we live in times in which everybody's identifying as everything. They're identifying as trees. I'm a tree. And we are told, hey, how many fingers am I holding up? Well, you're a tree. Smack! How many fingers am I holding up? Okay, 5. Smack! Right? It's called doublespeak in this book, because we see reality for what it is, but we're living in times in which we're we're told we have to say it's something that it isn't. Hold on, I'm just getting warmed up. And yes, you're like, I see you over there. You're like, oh, he's getting canceled for this one. My God, I might even report him, even though I agree with what he's saying, just because the man, he's going to get canceled on this. Shadow banned in the least. Let me tell you what that is, how that works. Okay. The boxer. I'll tell you about shadow banning here in a minute. It's funny. It cost me, close to $20,000, whatever. I've fixed it. Okay. Emaine Keyleth is her name. People, when she beat the French female boxer in 46 seconds, the French girl, what do you call that? Well, come on, it's a French word. She surrendered. Because she got hit in the nose. She said that was the hardest she'd ever been hit in her life, and she just knew she wouldn't be able to continue the fight. Well, then you see in the media, especially social media, which, remember folks, this isn't real. This is a green screen. You just think that's Bigfoot Sasquatch up there. It's an emoji. I'm not even real. I'm AI. You know what? Google this. If you were to Google the appearance of the average adult American male, it's a 5'9" white guy that weighs 170 pounds and has hazel eyes. I'm 5'9", I weigh 174, because I'm still losing some weight I put on last winter. And my eyes are hazel. I'm AI, brah! That's... Okay, so anyway, they were like, oh, she shouldn't be allowed to be in the Olympics. She was born a man. She's a transgender person, and you know, I'm tired of these men beating up girls and taking over female sports, women's sports, and all that. And I was like, huh. And I said, has it happened again? Is this happening again? But now listen, here's where I was going with that video the other day. I said, and this is true, I will not form an opinion on anything in life unless two reasons. Number one, I care, which is becoming less and less about all things anymore as I get older. And number two, unless if I'm properly informed, okay? Because you want to know who sounds like an idiot? People out there spouting their opinions on all these things of which they have zero experience. There are things I don't even talk about. Military service, time and war, unless I'm with another veteran. Life in other countries overseas, unless I'm with someone else who's actually visited that country, not as a tourist, people who actually were off the tourist trail, because people will just go on and on about their opinions of your experiences, which are so far removed from the reality, but then they expect you to think you're supposed to validate their view or something, even though it's erroneous, and they speak solely from headline news and magazines, whereas you speak from experience. So I just don't get into it with them. But I cared about this issue for several reasons. Number one, I'm a huge boxing fan. Number two, yeah, I took my hat off. It's 96 degrees right now. Number two, I'm a coach. I coach sports. And I have my views on men entering female sports. I am completely against it. But I wanted to know the facts before I came out here and said that this particular individual should not be allowed to play in the Olympics. So I Googled her, and what I found out is that she was born a female. She grew up as a little girl. She's never been a man in her life. She actually boxed as a little girl, and her father hated it. He didn't think that girls should box. She's from Algeria, which is a country that has very strict laws against homosexuality and transgenderism. It's perfectly conceivable that if she were a transgender person, her government might execute her for that. Kind of like how when I was in Iraq, if you were a homosexual, they would carry you to the top of a building and throw you off. It's one of the reasons I was happy to be over there, to let them know I disagreed with them on that. So anyway, so do I feel she should be allowed to play in the Olympics? Absolutely. And because of this crap going on, I hope she wins the gold. She's a woman. Listen, she has a very rare genetic disorder, which causes her female body to produce excessive levels of testosterone. There are people like her out there. She's a woman. She's a female. She's a good boxer, but she's not invincible. She's lost 9 fights, not in this Olympics, but in her professional or amateur boxing career. I guess pros can't fight in the Olympics, or they can now, can't they? Gosh, they got the NBA in there winning the gold medal in basketball every year. Man, I can't wait till they did putting flag football in there in 2008. I hope the previous year's Super Bowl winning team gets to go to the Olympics. There are people like her with her condition, both genders. Of course, with men, they would produce excessive amounts of estrogen. You know who makes it hard for people like her? This is the part where I'm getting ready to get canceled. Leah Thompson, the swimmer. Listen, and my story about the parking lot at the beginning of this video was relevant. Guys like that a-hole who lives down the way from me, who goes around claiming to be a veteran when he isn't, makes it hard on guys like me coming out of a grocery store and having to go through an inquiry in the parking lot because I parked in veteran parking and I'm a veteran. Yeah, now you get it, don't you? So you remember a couple of years ago, Leah Thompson was the NCAA Division I Women's National Champion. I can't remember the specific event, but it was a swimming event. National champion. A lot of people were in an uproar. A lot of people were outraged. A lot of people were supportive. They thought it was wonderful that happened. And Sports Illustrated is one of those people. They made Leah Thompson the athlete of the year. Put Leah on the cover of the magazine. When I heard about that race, the first thought that go through my mind was, wow, I really feel bad for whoever finished second. Because whoever finished second is a young woman, college-age woman, who I guarantee you, to be at that level, to be in that race, had to commit her life to swimming. You don't make it to the NCAA Division I finals unless you have devoted your life to that event, that sport, to that lifestyle. Hey, I wanted to be in the Olympics as a runner. I was state champion in the mile, went to track on a scholarship, or went to college on a track scholarship. When I was in high school, I was talking to my wife about this last night. I didn't eat pizza. I didn't drink beer. And she asked me why. And I said, because as an athlete, doing those things took me further away from my goal rather than getting me closer to it. So Leah Thompson wins the women's national championship. And I'm thinking, man, it would suck to be whoever finished second. I wonder who finished second. So I Googled it. And it really hit home, because guess who finished second? National champion runner-up, Emma Wyant. Emma Wyant, who was in that NCAA Division I finals representing the University of Virginia. Yeah. Emma grew up in Florida, went to college at UVA, swam for UVA, and almost achieved her childhood lifelong dream, but she was beaten by somebody who the previous year swam on the men's team. So, my opinion, hey, freedom of speech, right? We're all entitled to our own views, our own opinions. Yeah, as long as it agrees with Big Brother, right? Well, mine doesn't. That was a crime. Emma Wyant was robbed of her national championship. It should have never happened. So I wanted to know what Emma Wyant thought about this. What did she say about it? I Googled it because I do not run my mouth. What is it? An old cowboy quote. Don't go shooting off at your mouth unless you've loaded your brain first, right? So, according to what I've found, Emma Wyant has been canceled. I would venture to reason that that's probably because she disagreed with it as well. So what they canceled her. Yeah. But I did find, I'm now a new fan of a swimmer named Riley Gaines. Maybe some of you have seen Miss Gaines speak all over social media. She was in that NCAA Division I national championship competition. I don't know if she was in that particular event or that particular race, but she was there and she was in the locker room. And I watched like a 2-minute long video today of her explaining that locker room situation and what that was like. She said nobody prepared these young women. They knew that Leah Thompson would be in the event, in the competition, but they didn't prepare them for the fact that Leah Thompson was also in their locker room. So Riley Gaines is sharing her experience of what that was like. She says, you're in the locker room, you're in a very vulnerable situation and position, you're nude, you're suiting up, and she says, these swimsuits are skin tight, and it literally takes like 15 minutes to shimmy into them. That's how tight they are. So they're all in there, they're nude, and all of a sudden it just gets quiet, silent, dead silent, and she sees people looking over her shoulder, so she turns around and she says she sees this towering man in the locker room, towering over all of them. This man drops his clothes off to put on a swimsuit, and he has full male genitalia. And she said all the girls just instinctively covered up. That's what you do when you're a human being and you're nude. You're in your most vulnerable state, and somebody that you're not, familiar with, very familiar with, you just cover up. So she says all the girls, the young women, were in the locker room just covering up. And so she said what really upset her the most about it is how nobody stood up for her and how nobody stood up for those other young women. No coaches, nobody. And so she demanded answers. So she went to the meet organizers and said, why is this person, you know what, they're going to cancel me anyway for even giving my view on this. Why is this man in our locker room? They told her, the locker rooms are co-ed now. That's how they explained it. So, but it was a women's meet. There were no men's competitions there that day at that pool. So she says, so any of the coaches that are men can just come in here, and any of the referees that are men can just come in here now? And they said yes. Of course, none of them did. Just Leah Thomas, whatever the name is. So that's my take on it. And Riley, she made this statement. She talked about how we are accommodating one person at the expense of everyone else. That's how she felt that day. And so anyway, And then Emma Wyatt, she went on to win a silver medal in the 400 meter medley in 2020. And then she won a bronze this time around. Congratulations, Emma. In the 400 meter individual medley. What that is, it's 4 different strokes are used throughout the race. It's 100 meters of butterfly, backstrokes, breaststrokes, and then freestyle. 100 meters at each stroke. So, I guess that's it. The Algerian female boxer, in my understanding, is a female, and yes, I believe she's got every right to be in female boxing. I hope she wins the gold. She's catching a lot of hell from people who are misinformed. She was never a man. Leah Thompson, I wrote it down. Whatever, you know what I'm talking about. I do not believe that person should be allowed to compete in female sports because they were born a male, they went through male puberty. The distinct, unfair physical advantage is there. You don't go from being ranked the 444th male swimmer in the NCAA to being the national champion unless you switch genders or identify differently. But clearly from the locker room story we got, it was so whatever. But it's people like that who make it so hard. I hope I'm not mispronouncing her name. Emaine Khalif. I should just watch a video and I'd hear it. But it makes it so hard for people like her who just because of... So anyway, I'm telling you, if you haven't read this, you got to read it. There's a lot of foul language, a lot of adult situations, a lot of alternative lifestyle stuff in here. But I honestly, it was my attempt to write the modern day 1984 by writing this book. And it showcases the lunacy of the times that we live in that even George Orwell never foresaw coming. It's just crazy. It's crazy. I hope there's hope. We really just need to step in as individuals, as parents, as care providers, as leaders in our community, and make sure that facts and truth don't become extinct. All right, so thanks for all the emails. Thanks for watching me here. Thanks for supporting us at Sick Twisted Humor. Oh, shadow ban. So we make tons of money a day on Facebook. I'm not going to use numbers because most of you will hate me and you'll never come back. I made a video similar to this on Facebook not long ago. I didn't violate any of the community guidelines or standards. However, their AI is set up in such a way to where it captures anything of a conservative nature. And if you're a user, if you're just commenting on a post, they'll suspend you, they'll put you in Facebook jail. You do it enough times, they'll shut down your account. And you say, do what enough times? Say anything of a conservative nature. And it's AI. This AI is programmed to capture this stuff. Listen, my views in an election cycle, when there's an election in November, on YouTube even, every November before the election drop 80% because the bots here know, even though I claim to not be political because I'm not, I just am a little right of center. I don't care enough about politics to get involved. And this stuff is not a political issue. Letting men go beat up on girls in their sporting events, that's not a political issue. That is a right and wrong issue. So anyway, my views will drop. It's because the AI bots know that I am of a conservative nature, and they will keep my views down out of fear that the day might come that I might come in here and tell you to vote for the conservative candidates. They don't want, yeah. So anyway, what did Facebook do to me? Oh, they shadow banned me for a couple of weeks. They didn't give, basically they weren't letting people see my content. And so I watched our revenues, which are crazy every day, drop down to almost like upper middle class levels. And I told my wife, I got it. I think it's that video. I think the AI caught it, and I think I need to remove it, or I'm only going to be making as much money as a stockbroker again, or a lawyer. And she's like, try it. And so I removed the video, and the next day, bam, influencer money again. So that's what a shadow ban is. People say, does social media really censor? I'll let you decide. See you for more next time from the greatest homesteading channel on the planet that has nothing to do with homesteading, but everything to do with facts, reality, and real life. And potentially Bigfoot Sasquatch. Homesteading off the grid. See you for more next time.